New York City isn't just huge and a buzzing metropolis, it is also one thing above all: incredibly diverse. The city is home to a wide range of neighborhoods, each shaped by different waves of immigration. The most famous one is probably Chinatown, then there's Little Italy, known for its Italian community, and believe it or not, there's even a neighborhood called Little Odessa here, which, as the name suggests, is home to many people with roots in Ukraine.
But would you have thought that there was once also a German district in the city of New York? Well, there really was. It was called Little Germany, or Klein Deutschland in German. It had its origins on the Lower East Side in Manhattan and here in East Village, and for many decades it was a quite important part of the city.
Back then, tens of thousands of Germans lived here, bringing a rich culture with them. There were German beer halls, shooting clubs, schools, and even a library and a German hospital. Parks were filled with German festivals, newspapers were sold at kiosks, and also many businesses were run by German owners.
Today, there is hardly anything left of Little Germany. If you take a really close look, you can still see some relics, but you won't find any German clubhouses or festivals anymore here. It seems like Little Germany completely disappeared from the map. This, of course, raises one question. Why? Why is the district that once brought German culture to the city of New York gone? What happened to all those German shops that used to be here? And what happened to all those German immigrants? Well, there is one thing I can already tell you. The disappearance of Little Germany is more tragic than you think. Okay, I just arrived in Manhattan's East Village. Here and on the Lower East Side in the 19th century, Little Germany was created. I have to say, today it doesn't really look German anymore. You also don't hear a word of German on the streets anymore, except mine, of course. There are still some relics. We will visit them in a few minutes. But before we do that, let's take a quick look at history and let's answer the question, why was Little Germany actually created back then?
The story of the Germans in New York begins in 1820. At this time, a large wave of German immigrants arrives in the United States and many of them settle in Manhattan. This immigration boom happens for several reasons. For one, Germany has an excess of workers while the US is experiencing a labor shortage. On top of that, stories about the good life in the still young United States are spreading. Germans dream of prosperity in the so-called land of freedom. By 1855, New York ends up with the third largest German-speaking population in any city of the world. Only Berlin and Vienna have more. During this time, the German community also shapes the city's life and culture. Many Germans work as bakers and carpenters, and many are also involved in construction. But unlike other immigrant groups like the Irish, Germans tend to form close-knit communities. Over the years, more and more small clusters form, and over time, all these small communities come together to form Little Germany. A little piece of Germany right in the heart of New York.
Well, and if you look closely, you still can see at least a little bit of this culture today. The place I am right now is Tompkins Square Park. This was the central square for the Germans in New York back in the day. It was also called White Garden. There were a lot of parties and festivals here, and also a lot of buildings that were important for the cultural life.
And if we take a little walk through this park today, we will quickly notice there is not that much left of the German life that once thrived here. The park itself is like any other park, simple, unembellished. But as for what this park used to be, a meeting place for Germans in New York, you wouldn't really notice that today. Even the buildings that once stood on this park's grounds are long gone. Things start to get interesting though when we step out of this park and explore the neighborhood around it a little. It's hard to imagine now, but these streets were once lined with German beer gardens, sport clubs, churches, workshops, factories, and even a lot of German department stores. And if we walk to the end of the street, we can at least find one relic from that time, this building right here. Take a look at the facade, see what's written on it. Yeah, there is actually an inscription in German. The name of the German-American Schützenverein, which means shooting society. If you're not that familiar with German tradition, that's actually a thing in Germany. Every little village in Germany has a Schützenverein, a shooting society, and they meet every year to shoot a fake plastic bird from a tree. And then there is a huge festival in the village with music and a lot of beer and stuff like that. And as you can see here, also in New York, there used to be a German shooting society back in the day. Of course, none of that remains today. The club no longer exists, and people probably walk past this building every day without even noticing the German words on its facade. But at least this building still serves an entertainment purpose. It's now home to a comedy club. And if we walk just a little further down the street, we will find another remnant of this German past, the Ottendorfer Library. And here too, you can see this building also has a German inscription. This was once the library of the German community in New York. And the same goes for the building right next to it, the German Dispensary, a hospital for the poor. And if you take a closer look around today, you will notice what has replaced the old Little Germany. There are Ukrainian flags flying everywhere. There are Ukrainian restaurants and Ukrainian grocery stores. So in a way, this neighborhood is still just as multicultural as it was back then, only with different people.
Interesting, right? Well, those were the relics of Little Germany. As you can see, not that much is left today. And I would say now it's time to answer the question, why? Why is there no Little Germany anymore today here in New York? And the answer to this question brings us back here to Tompkins Square Park. There is a monument in this park. Unfortunately, not this monument right behind me. It's the monument right behind those buildings over there. Unfortunately, there are construction works going on right now and I can't visit this monument, but there is a fountain that commemorates one of the worst New York disasters before 9/11. And this disaster also has something to do with the disappearance of Little Germany.
It is the 15th of June 1904. The German St. Mark's Church in New York is celebrating its traditional end-of-the-year school picnic, just like every year. This time, a large paddle steamer has been chartered for a leisure cruise on the New York East River. The ship's name is General Slocum. The problem, the General Slocum is not exactly a ship that inspires confidence. Just 4 months after its launch in 1891, it ran aground and needed to be freed. A few years later, it struck a sandbank, then it got caught in a storm and ran aground again. It even collided with a tugboat on the East River, causing significant damage, and in 1898 it crashed into another ship. And well, the cruise on June 15, 1904 is just another chapter of this long series of misadventures, with one difference. This time it's the last voyage of the General Slocum. At 9:30 a.m., the ship sets off from the East River. On board are mostly women and children, since it's a weekday and most of the fathers are at work. It's meant to be a fun outing with laughter and celebration filling the ship. But just half an hour later, a fire breaks out in the front cabin, or possibly the lamp room, it's not exactly clear. The cause? Possibly a discarded cigarette or a match. The fire quickly spreads, fueled by straw on the ship and lamp oil, so within minutes, large parts of the ship are fully ablaze. And almost everything goes wrong in the attempt to put out the fire. The captain is notified too late. There's even a story of a young boy who had warned people but wasn't listened to. And what's even worse, the ship's safety equipment hasn't been maintained or replaced in years. A fire hose that could have helped put out the flames is completely rotten. And the lifeboats can't be launched because the ship's paint has stuck them in place. Even the life jackets, according to eyewitnesses, are useless. They fall apart as soon as they are unpacked. Some mothers on board put those life jackets on their children and throw them into the water, hoping they would survive, only to discover their children sink. At the time of the disaster, nearly 1,400 people from the German community in New York are on this boat. The majority of them cannot swim. At the end of the day, which was supposed to be a nice picnic tour, 1,021 people lose their lives.
This shipping disaster today is considered to be the main reason why there is no longer a German district here in New York today. Almost every family at that time suffered at least one death because of this catastrophe, and there were also a lot of families and people on the ship that were very important for the German life here in New York.
The heart of Little Germany, you could say, was practically wiped out after this tragedy. The people who had held the community together for so many years were suddenly gone. Some of the fathers who lost their families on the boat later also committed suicide. And the rest of the people in Little Germany scattered over the years, moving to different neighborhoods throughout New York. But there were also other factors in play. More and more people from all over the world were immigrating to New York at that time, which mixed up the neighborhoods even more and caused Little Germany to shrink further anyway. The second generation of Germans eventually moved to other areas rather than staying in their own little group on the Lower East Side. But with the 1904 ship disaster, the end of the neighborhood was sealed once and for all.
There was an attempt to revive the German tradition in New York later. In the years that followed, a new Little Germany was built on 86th Street, which you can see right behind me, and on 3rd Avenue, today's Yorkville. However, this new Little Germany was much smaller, and it also was quite different from the former one.
The former St. Mark's Church, for example, was abandoned and eventually merged with another church in Yorkville. The vibrant community life was no longer as strong as it had been in earlier times. What did still exist were German businesses, and there was also a new central German square, the Karl-Schurz-Park, which you see here. However, by 1914, also this chapter of history came to an end. The First World War began, and from 1917, Germany was officially an enemy of the United States. From that point on, Germans in New York were no longer welcome, German newspapers ceased publication, German language schools were abolished, and eventually only English was spoken in churches, so over the years German cultural heritage nearly disappeared from the city.
Well, everything I have just told you about happened a long time ago. But the interesting thing is, even though there is not much left of Little Germany in New York today, there are still a few institutions that survived from that time into the present. And one of those institutions is this building right behind me. This is St. Paul's Church, a German church, and there is still a weekly German service held in this building. And I would say, let's go in there and let's take a look.
Ich weiß nicht, wie dein Leben so funktioniert, aber mein Leben funktioniert manchmal so, dass ich denke, es wäre gut, wenn manche Sachen neu wären und nicht alt. Also nicht nur meine Knie, sondern auch so von meinem Geist her, von meiner Seele her. Manches, was in der Vergangenheit war, darauf bin ich nicht stolz.
The man you just heard speaking is Lars Reimann. He didn't grow up in the United States, he only came to New York in 2022, more or less by chance, because there was a job opening for a German pastor. Before that, Lars Reimann worked in the same position in northern Germany. When he arrived in New York, however, the German community at St. Paul's Church was in bad shape, as he told me. You could almost say it was more or less on its deathbed.
Also die Pandemie hat allen Kirchen weltweit wirklich geschadet. Also die wenigsten haben da irgendwie Gewinn draus gezogen, glaube ich, oder sind zumindest unbeschadet rausgekommen. Und der Pastorenwechsel, der auch noch in diese Zeit fiel, hat auch nicht genützt. Das alles sind natürlich so Zeiten, die, ich sag mal, nicht wirklich einer Gemeinschaft so richtig dabei dienen, dass es allen gut geht und dass sie das Gefühl haben, jetzt haben wir eine stabile, angenehme, für uns gute Situation. Das ist einfach völlig normal. Also wie wenn im Sportverein der Trainer plötzlich weg ist.
And with this situation, also an important piece of German cultural heritage was at risk. The St. Paul's community has its roots in the first generation of immigrants. It was officially founded in 1841, which makes it over 180 years old today. So Lars Reimann had a lot of work ahead of him. He says he first had to clean things up, try to bring some continuity back, and above all, offer regular services again. And over time, he noticed that the German community was slowly starting to recover. The Germans who come to the church service here come from very different backgrounds. Some have German roots, others emigrated to the US many years ago. Lars Reimann also mentions many students come here, and then there are those who were sent to the US by German companies. So it's a mix from all walks of life.
Wir haben einfach Menschen in der Gemeinde, die aus solchen verschiedenen Berufsfeldern kommen, die wir einfach in Schleswig-Holstein so nicht getroffen hätten. Also Landeshauptstadt Kiel hat 200.000 Einwohner ungefähr, aber große Industrien gibt es da nicht. Google hat da keinen Standort und Nvidia hat da auch kein Büro. Und das ist hier für uns so eine bunte Welt mit Menschen sehr unterschiedlicher Lebensstile, sehr unterschiedlichen Karrieren, sehr unterschiedlichen Lebensansprüchen. Das ist schon auch, das macht wirklich Spaß. Also es ist sehr interessant und vielfältig. Und wir lernen so viel von den Menschen und aus ihrer Welt und versuchen auch zu verstehen, was sie machen und darauf für uns was draus zu ziehen. Das ist wirklich interessant, ja.
For all those people, the German church community serves as a place of exchange, but also as a place to discuss their problems here in the megacity of New York. Especially when it comes to pastoral care, Lars Reimann notices quite a few differences compared to his earlier work in northern Germany.
Also was macht es eigentlich mit mir, so als Mensch in einer Megacity, Gotham City, zu leben? Aber ich will auch Christ sein. Ich laufe hier an so vielen Fentanyl-Süchtigen vorbei, wie wahrscheinlich an wenigen Orten auf dem Planeten einfach so. Aber ich möchte auch Nächstenliebe leben. Also das sind hier auch wirklich virulente Themen natürlich. Also die Stadt in all dem Tollen und all dem Schwierigen und Furchtbaren, die ist so massiv da drin und so kontrovers auch in sich. Also du kannst nicht ohne kontroverse Gefühle von einem Block zum anderen kommen. Das ist einfach nicht möglich. Und das bewirkt natürlich auch bei allen, die eine gesunde Seele haben, irgendwelche Mechanismen und manchmal auch Schwierigkeiten. Ja.
But Lars Reimann's church is not the only German institution that you can still find today here in New York. Right behind me you can see the butcher's shop Schaller und Weber. That sounds pretty German, doesn't it? Well, and it is.
The butcher shop is located, as you might have already guessed, in Yorkville, the very same place where the second small Germany emerged. However, the butcher shop is a bit younger. It was founded in 1937 by Ferdinand Schaller, a butcher and sausage maker from Stuttgart, who arrived in New York by ship in 1927. Today, his descendants continue the family tradition. Here you can find everything from sausages to ground meat, just like you would in Stuttgart in Germany, and on top of that, countless other German products. Schaller and Weber today isn't just this small shop, it also has several other branches. It includes a catering service, a snack bar, a pub, and they supply various supermarket chains with their own products. So, the German butcher craft that started with a small shop many decades ago is now firmly established in the metropolis of New York.
Well, and right next to the butcher's shop, there is another building that looks quite German, half timbered style, I would say, and it also has a quite German name, Heidelberg. Yeah, it's a restaurant, a German restaurant, and I would say, let's go in there and eat something traditional German in New York.
Yeah, the restaurant Heidelberg also has its origins in the second Little Germany and is over 100 years old. Remarkably, it has managed to stay afloat despite the decline of the neighborhood and continues to thrive even to this day. This is largely thanks to a woman named Luise Edler. She bought this already traditional German restaurant in 1964 and, according to her own account, worked day and night to ensure the success of the place. Today it is run by her grandson Andreas. And this is Hanna Sprung. She works at restaurant Heidelberg today and also has German roots.
Ich komme aus Aachen und ich bin damals, als ich 23 Jahre war, bin ich nach San Francisco gegangen. Dann war ich da für 6 Jahre, dann bin ich nach New York gekommen. Ich habe Schauspiel studiert, das wollte ich damals machen. Und dann bin ich nach New York gekommen, dann habe ich angefangen hier zu arbeiten. Und wenn man Schauspieler werden will, ist man ja häufig mehr Bartender oder Kellner.
Hanna has now been living in the United States for 22 years. You can tell because in the interview she occasionally switches from German to English without even realizing it. Well, and also restaurant Heidelberg itself is quite multicultural. Of course, it's not just Germans who come here. No, traditional German cuisine is popular with people from all over the world.
Also du hast natürlich schon jetzt deutsche Touristen, die viel kommen, auch noch Deutsche, die dann hier oder Leute, die europäischer Abstammung sind und das auch noch irgendwie kennen, ne? Also so Eastern Europeans, die das irgendwie noch von zu Hause kennen und die Oma. Viele Asiaten mögen es auch, die essen ja gerne Schweinefleisch, habe ich aber auch erst, wurde mir erst so bewusst, seitdem ich hier arbeite, wusste ich gar nicht, dass sie so gerne Schweinefleisch essen. Aber ich würde sagen, wirklich jeder. Es ist aber auch so ein Laden, wenn du hier einmal hinkommst. Also wir haben viele Leute, die kommen hier einmal hin und dann werden das dann Stammgäste.
So, of course, I also had to ask Hanna what one can eat at restaurant Heidelberg, because one thing was clear to me. If I'm visiting a German restaurant in New York, I definitely have to dig in.
Hier hast du alles vom Wiener Schnitzel bis zum Jägerschnitzel, Schnitzel à la Holstein, also alle Schnitzel, die man sich wünschen kann. Ja, dann Wurstplatten, Gulasch, Sauerbraten, Ente. Also hast hier wirklich alles, was man so normalerweise zu den Feiertagen bei Oma gegessen hat. Ne? Das hast du dann hier eben so. Also so richtig oldschool, deftiges deutsches Essen.
And what German dish is the most popular with New Yorkers?
It's very hard. I think Wiener Schnitzel and the sausage platter are the most ordered items in general. The most popular one, though, which everybody knows is our house specialty, is Schweinehaxe. During the holiday season, there's so much cheese fondue. I mean, like, you know, people start with cheese fondue as an appetizer. But I would say, in general, Wiener Schnitzel and sausage platter is like the go-to for most people. Yeah.
Do you like anything else, like a beer or anything?
No, I still have my Coke, and that's fine.
You want me to get some more ice?
Yeah, that would be great.
All right.
Great, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Thanks a lot.
Enjoy.
Thank you. Leute, guckt euch das mal an. Ein Jägerschnitzel mit Spätzle und ein Salat dazu. Ja, feels like zu Hause. Jetzt ist noch die Frage, schmeckt es auch wie zu Hause? Top. Richtig gut. Thank you. Bye bye. Thank you. Bye bye. So, here we are back in the hotel. That was my video about Little Germany in New York. Have you ever heard about this place before? Well, now you did, and now you can tell all your friends about it. Isn't that great? Well,
If you liked this video, if you learned something, please leave a thumbs up. You can also hit the subscribe button and ring the bell so you won't miss any upcoming video. And if you'd like to support me and my work, you can also do that, for example, on Patreon. There's a link down in the description. And you can also become a channel member on my YouTube channel. Then you will also get exclusive stuff and new videos before everyone else. So you should check that out. And yeah, so far I would say have a safe journey and see you next time.